4 points between Crystal Palace in 12th to Southampton in 20th.
Yeah.
Currently, the teams without experience in the dugout occupy the bottom three. Southampton and Ruben Sellers in 20th. Javi Gracia and Leeds 19th.
Yep.
Gary O'Neill, Bournemouth 18th.
They do currently, yeah.
But then, also getting sucked into it, West Ham 17th, David Moyes. Leicester 16th, Brendan Rodgers. Everton in there as well, 15th, 1 point clear, Sean Dyche.
Yep.
Could we see multiple big name casualties when the drop comes on the day we know who's going to go down to the Championship? We just might.
You just might. I mean, it feels like the bottom three are beginning to become the bottom three. But there's such a juxtapose week on week. If you saw Nottingham Forest and how feeble they were against Tottenham, but I've been led to believe that there are two different sides. I was with a Nottingham Forest fan. Their home form is giving them the salvation because their away form is feeble and they are very poor. You think they might get dragged in, and I hope they don't, and I don't think they will. Then you look at Sean Dyche. It was 4 or 5 days ago, people suddenly going, hang on, is the Dyche effect worn off? They can't score goals. Boom, they go and beat Brentford.
And then you look at Bournemouth, who get a win over Liverpool.
And then you look at
Southampton, who get a point at Old Trafford.
Yeah, I mean, I think Southampton are gone. And I do think that we are looking more like, and I made a case that I didn't think it would be Leeds United, but they're not recovering. I like Javi Gracia. I think he's a decent manager. I think he can consider himself slightly unlucky at Watford, but then there's a long list of managers that will consider themselves unlucky at Watford. And I look at that and say, I don't think Crystal Palace will get sucked back into it. I think Wolves with Lopetegui is just too good a manager. Lopetegui, yeah. I think Dyche has always been maintained by most of us that he'll get Everton out of trouble. Moyes, I still maintain there's enough about him, although I don't like David's constant looking back at what they've done previously. So then you're left with Brendan at Leicester, and you're left with the bottom three. And
yeah, but does reputation count here? For anything in a scrap like this?
No, not really.
I mean, you're talking about some big names there. And why should we think that Southampton are already gone? They win at Stamford Bridge. They get a point at Old Trafford.
But everyone was beating Chelsea at that point on making Chelsea's life very difficult.
Oh, Simon, come on. That was a shock. Result.
But it was a shock the previous season when Brentford went to Stamford Bridge and beat Chelsea convincingly. Chelsea are not a very particularly good side at this moment in time. So it wasn't a shock at that time. They're getting better. They're recovering their poise. But Southampton are at the bottom of the table. The challenge is that nobody's adrift. Nobody's out of consideration. And what you've got is a race to the bottom, literally. I remember when my team got relegated, there were 4 sides that could have got relegated in the last game of the season. It was called the Survival Sunday because there was 4 or 5 sides that could have gone down.
Sure.
So in this instance, it looks like this could be another season of real jeopardy and real intrigue, with all of the sides being in touching distance, because you cannot discount somebody that's 2 points out of the relegation zone, Nottingham Forest. You simply cannot.
That's right. Leeds United, you mentioned, they've won fewest games of all of the Premier League sides.
But none of these sides, what is also very interesting is none of these sides have gone. I mean, looking like they've gone in terms of their body language, their attitude, all of them have tried to effect a change at different times during the course of the season. The change on Bournemouth was a enforced change. It wasn't a change to react to adverse circumstances. It was an enforced change based upon Scott Parker's behaviour. Leeds United and Southampton are changes based upon the impending, imminent, looming spectre of relegation.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, they've made those changes. Southampton didn't really, because they put someone in from their dugout. And I actually quite like Ruben Sellers. I think he speaks quite well. But his team aren't necessarily backing up some of his some of the strength that I think he's exuding in the dugout.
Yeah.
We will see. But I just don't think West Ham and Leicester are, with their managers and with the quality of some of those players, and the key component to Leicester is James Maddison. If he's playing and he's fit, Leicester function most of the time. There's been a few exceptions. I think Dyche and Everton, I just think Sean's got the toolkit. He knows what he's doing. He'll find a way and even get the handbag carrier back on.
As an owner, did you always prepare for worst case scenario?
No. Why would you?
Are any of these owners preparing for worst case scenario?
What, relegation?
Right.
Did
you not prepare for it?
No. What's the point of preparing for something you desperately don't want? You can't. It's not a case of preparing for it. You know, there's not a lot you can do about it. If you're going to get relegated, then ultimately, as an owner of a football club in February or March, when the transfer windows have done, and you've played your best cards, then most of the time you're already in the hands of the gods with those that you've put into place, and you've allowed to get to a point where it's almost at the point of no return. So preparing for it is like what? Suggesting who you're going to sell.
Put clauses in contracts.
Oh, but contracts have already been given. That's irrelevant. You can't go and rewrite the contracts. The contracts have already been given. You walk through the door and say, listen, lads, can I just have a conversation with you about changing your contracts? They'll go, we ain't got relegated yet. And by the way, where are you in this equation?
No, but hang on. That's reportedly what West Ham have done. Even big money signings who arrived in the summer agreed to clauses in the contracts.
And that's fine.
That will see their pay be reduced.
And that's fine.
If they drop to the Championship.
You're asking me what I would have done at the beginning of the season. So, but if you're asking what I'll do now, I can do nothing now, can I? The contracts have already been signed. So West Ham didn't suddenly sneak into the dressing room and say, by the way, we're going to slip this under the door and you guys have got to sign this. There's a relegation clause in there. Because the players would burst out laughing, wouldn't they? So with that in mind, I realise David Sullivan can get underneath the door. But the point is that he wouldn't have done that, right? So here we are now, where you are in the lap of the gods. The only time when I never consider relegation, because I don't look at the world that way. The only time I considered relegation was when we played Blackburn away and they scored a goal. Robbie Savage scored a goal, which was a disappointment to me in its own right. But they scored a goal, and it suddenly dawned upon me: there's a bloody good chance we could get relegated here, and it's a horrible feeling, I can tell you.
Oh, God. I'm sorry, I've still got that image of Sullivan in my mind. So
he could limbo dance under this table in Cuban Hills in a top hat, couldn't he?
when you were back up, you've knocked me right off my stride. Anyway, all right, you didn't make provision.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.